Inside Johnny Carson's once lavish Malibu estate, silence now fills the halls where laughter once echoed. The king of late-night television, who kept millions company every evening, left behind more than just memories. He left behind an abandoned mansion, heartbreaking family losses, and a fortune that shocked even his closest friends. How did the man who seemed to have it all, fame, wealth, and charm, end up retreating into solitude, battling private demons, and leaving behind a legacy clouded by tragedy? And why does his deserted mansion still whisper stories of secrets never told? Stay with us as we step inside Johnny Carson's world, the glamour, the heartbreak, and the hidden truths. And before we dive deeper, make sure to subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories that reveal the side of fame you'll never see on stage. For 3 decades, Johnny Carson wasn't just a television host. He was America's nightly ritual. From 1962 until his retirement in 1992, he reigned over The Tonight Show, shaping late-night television into the powerhouse it is today. His quick wit, impeccable timing, and effortless charm made him the gold standard. Comedians prayed for his approval. Actors and musicians considered an invitation to his couch the ultimate career breakthrough. To audiences, Carson seemed untouchable, always smiling, always in control, always the smoothest man in the room. But the magic of Johnny Carson was a performance carefully crafted under the spotlight. Away from the cameras, he was a man who often struggled with solitude, discomfort, and almost painful shyness. His peers noticed the contrast immediately. Dick Cavett, a fellow talk show host, once admitted he felt sympathy for Carson, describing him as deeply uncomfortable in ordinary social situations. Others echoed the same observation. Without a camera lens and an audience, Johnny seemed to vanish into himself. It was a strange paradox. How could a man who commanded the attention of millions every night falter in the simplest conversations at dinner parties? Screenwriter George Axelrod offered the most cutting description. Socially, he doesn't exist. If people had little red lights in their foreheads, Johnny would be the greatest conversationalist alive. That remark captured Carson's unique dependency on performance. The red light of the studio camera gave him energy, confidence, and charm. Without it, he seemed lost. And yet, this paradox only deepened his appeal. He was both larger than life and utterly human, someone who could make the world laugh while battling personal battles nobody could see. To viewers, Carson looked like he was always in command. To those close to him, he was the most private public figure they had ever met. But as the years went on, this secretive nature became more than just a quirk. It was the shield he carried, one that would hide truths about his personal life, his relationships, and his empire. And when those cracks began to show, the revelations would stun everyone who thought they knew Johnny Carson. For most celebrities, interviews are opportunities, chances to humanize themselves, promote their projects, or shape their public narrative. For Johnny Carson, interviews were a battlefield he refused to enter. He was notorious for shutting down any question that strayed beyond his Tonight Show persona. While other stars spilled details about marriages, politics, or family struggles, Carson built walls. Take once. Reporters who dared to ask about his childhood, political leanings, or personal relationships were often met with silence or worse, ridicule. Carson didn't just decline to answer. He went a step further, arming himself with a stack of pre-written responses to deflect curiosity. They weren't serious answers. They were cryptic and bizarre. To "Did you ever?" he might say, "Yes, I did." To questions about scandals, he'd shrug. Not a bit of truth in that rumor. And then there was the infamous reply, "No, kumquats," a nonsense word meant to frustrate journalists and remind them that his personal life was off limits. This evasive streak wasn't just stubbornness. It revealed the depth of Carson's discomfort with intimacy. On stage, he thrived on precision and performance. Off stage, he was terrified of exposure. By refusing to discuss his private world, he maintained control, protecting vulnerabilities that he feared would erode the carefully crafted image of Johnny Carson, king of late night. But the shield of privacy came at a cost. Fans adored the version of Carson they saw on screen, but few felt they truly knew the man behind the jokes. Even his closest associates described him as the most private public man alive, and in Hollywood, a city that thrives on gossip and spectacle that made him an enigma. Still, no mask holds forever. Carson's life would soon burst into headlines anyway, not through his words, but through the chaos of his personal relationships. Behind the scenes, his marriages were unraveling, one after another, and the courtroom drama that followed would expose more than Carson ever intended. Because the very thing he fought hardest to hide, his private world, was about to be put on display for all of America to see. For all his success on television, Johnny Carson's private life was far less stable. His charm and wit might have won over America, but behind closed doors, his marriages told a story of conflict, betrayal, and heartbreak. Carson's first marriage was to Jody Wolcott in 1949, long before he became a household name. At first, it was the picture of small-town romance. Two young people in love, trying to build a future together. But as Carson's career took off, the pressures of show business created cracks. Infidelity on both sides turned their relationship volatile. Arguments became routine, and the growing distance between Carson's rising stardom and Jody's everyday life made the marriage unsustainable. By 1963, after 14 rocky years, it ended in divorce. But Carson didn't stay single for long. That same year, he married Joanne Copeland, a glamorous figure who entered his world just as his Tonight Show fame was exploding. Their marriage had its bright moments, marked by the luxury that Carson's success could afford. Yet the glamour masked growing tension. By the time their relationship collapsed in 1972, the divorce settlement made headlines. Copeland walked away with nearly $500,000 at the time, worth millions today, along with annual alimony and a valuable art collection. It was one of the first signs of how costly Carson's private struggles could be. Still, Carson rarely let the public see the pain. On stage, he laughed. At home, he loved and lost, again and again. The most private public man lived through breakups that revealed the sharp contrast between Johnny Carson, the entertainer, and Johnny Carson, the husband. And as messy as these early marriages were, they were only the beginning. His next relationship wouldn't just end in heartache. It would explode into one of the most expensive and publicized divorces Hollywood had ever seen. If Johnny Carson's first two marriages were turbulent, his third was nothing short of a Hollywood drama. In 1972, Carson stunned his friends, colleagues, and even his closest confidants by announcing, during The Tonight Show's 10th anniversary party, that he had secretly married model Joanna Holland earlier that very afternoon. The revelation shocked everyone. Carson, the man who guarded his personal life so fiercely, had pulled off a wedding without anyone knowing. It was a reminder of just how much control he demanded over his private narrative. At first, the marriage looked like a glamorous chapter in Carson's life. Holland, a striking former model, introduced him to the elegance of European travel, whisking him away to Monte Carlo, Antibes, and Wimbledon, places where Carson could finally enjoy anonymity, free from the glare of American fame. Their Hollywood lifestyle was equally extravagant: a $500,000 mansion, high-profile social circles, and all the trappings of a power couple. But beneath the luxury, the same old cracks began to show. By 1982, Holland had grown weary of Carson's infidelity. Their separation, reportedly initiated by her, led to a long and bitter divorce battle. When the settlement was finalized in 1985, it became one of the most jaw-dropping financial divorces of its time. Holland walked away with an extraordinary $20 million, equivalent to nearly $60 million today, along with luxury cars, multiple Manhattan apartments, and alimony payments of $35,000 a month. The lavish package stunned the public and cemented Carson's reputation as one of the most bankable stars in television. Carson himself didn't shy away from the spectacle. Rather than sulk in silence, he used a painful divorce as comedic fodder on The Tonight Show, cracking jokes at his own expense. It was classic Carson, turning personal turmoil into entertainment. But laughter couldn't erase the truth. Behind the punchlines, this divorce revealed the staggering wealth Carson had amassed and the heavy personal cost that came with it. Yet, as devastating as losing millions might have been, money would soon pale in comparison to the loss that shattered him more than any courtroom battle ever could. For all the wealth Johnny Carson lost in divorces, nothing compared to the devastating blow he suffered in 1991. His middle son, Richard "Ricky" Carson, had grown into a young man with a deep love for photography and nature. Ricky often disappeared for long stretches into the outdoors, camera in hand, chasing the perfect shot of landscapes, wildlife, and skies. It was his passion, his escape, and his art. But one day, while out on a photography trip, tragedy struck. Ricky was killed in a car accident at just 39 years old. The news shattered Johnny. For a man who lived his life behind carefully guarded walls, the death of his son broke through every barrier. When he returned to The Tonight Show just weeks later, America witnessed a different side of the king of late night. Gone was the effortless host with the mischievous smile. Instead, Carson delivered a heartfelt, raw tribute to his son, a grieving father struggling to put words around an unspeakable loss. It was one of the rare moments when Johnny allowed the world to glimpse the man beneath the mask. But even that tender moment was marred by controversy. As Carson poured his heart out on national television, longtime producer Fred DeCordova signaled for him to wrap it up, worried the show was running over time. The gesture enraged Carson, who felt the most personal moment of his career was being treated like just another segment. DeCordova was quietly banned from the studio floor for the remainder of Carson's tenure. The loss of Ricky lingered for the rest of Carson's life. Years later, during his farewell season in 1992, Carson made sure his two surviving sons, Christopher and Corey, joined him on stage, an uncharacteristically public acknowledgement of family. And in his final Tonight Show broadcast, Ricky's nature photography appeared in the end credits, a quiet but powerful tribute. For all his money and fame, Carson could never buy back what he lost. And while fans admired his resilience, the tragedy only deepened the sense of mystery around him. Because if Johnny Carson could bare his soul once, what else was he hiding in silence? For decades, Johnny Carson appeared untouchable, his career unshakable, his presence timeless. But behind the charisma, he was fighting a slow battle with an enemy of his own making: cigarettes. From the earliest days of The Tonight Show, Carson lit up on camera, puffing casually between jokes. It became part of his image, the cool, calm host who made smoking look effortless. But behind the glamour, the habit was spiraling out of control. At his peak, Carson smoked nearly 4 packs of Pall Malls a day, an astonishing amount that would eventually erode his health. By the mid-1970s, he wasn't hiding the toll it was taking. Off camera, Carson was heard muttering a phrase that carried a chilling sense of resignation. "These things are killing me." It was more than a quip. It was prophecy. Decades of heavy smoking scarred his lungs, leading to health crises that would shadow his later years. In March 1999, Carson suffered a massive heart attack at his Malibu home, forcing doctors to perform a quadruple bypass surgery. For fans, it was a wake-up call. The man who had been part of their nightly routine for 30 years was no longer invincible. But Carson, true to form, downplayed his condition. keeping his suffering private and out of the spotlight. By 2002, his silence spoke louder than words. He declined NBC's invitation to its 75th anniversary celebration, a clear signal that his health was deteriorating. Later that year, he confirmed he had been diagnosed with emphysema, a disease directly tied to his decades of smoking. Those close to him revealed his final conversations were filled with regret, his brother recalling that Carson muttered repeatedly, "Those damn cigarettes." On January 23, 2005, the battle ended. Carson passed away at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, his lungs finally giving out. He was 79 years old. In keeping with his lifelong wish for privacy, there was no public memorial, only whispers of remembrance from the family he left behind. But even as his health failed, one question loomed larger than life. What would become of the empire, the fortune, and the sprawling properties Johnny Carson left behind? Of all the homes Johnny Carson owned, none captured his paradox better than his Malibu estate. Perched high above Point Dume on 4 acres of prime California coastline, it was both a fortress of privacy and a monument to extravagance. Designed in 1978 by visionary architect Ed Niles, the 7,000-square-foot residence was a modernist masterpiece, part retreat, part statement of power. From the moment guests entered, the design set the tone. Towering glass walls offered sweeping views of the Pacific, blurring the line between the living room and the ocean itself. A soaring indoor atrium filled with lush greenery brought nature inside, while a dramatic copper and glass fireplace became the home's glowing centerpiece. Every detail spoke to Carson's desire for both spectacle and solitude. Beyond the walls, the estate was a playground of luxury. There was a saltwater pool designed to merge seamlessly with the horizon, koi ponds with cascading waterfalls, and a private tennis court with its own pavilion complete with guest suites, gym, sauna, and bar. The grounds blended the serenity of a desert retreat with the indulgence of a Hollywood palace. And yet, for all its grandeur, the estate was also a place of isolation. Carson lived there quietly for more than 2 decades, using the sanctuary as a buffer from the fame that had once consumed him. In many ways, the empty hallways and panoramic windows mirrored the contradictions of the man himself, open to millions on screen, closed off and solitary in private. After Carson's death in 2005, his widow, Alexis Moss, sold the property to billionaire Sidney Kimmel. Years later, the estate was listed for as much as $81.5 million, becoming one of Malibu's most coveted homes. But even with its astronomical value, the house carried an aura of absence. For fans, it was more than a luxury estate. It was a symbol of the king of late night's retreat into silence. Yet Carson's legacy wasn't confined to bricks, glass, and ocean views. The true measure of what he left behind was in his staggering fortune and the surprising ways it continued to shape lives long after his final curtain call. When Johnny Carson passed away in 2005, the question on everyone's mind was not only how he would be remembered, but also just how vast his fortune truly was. By the end of his career, Carson had accumulated an estimated net worth of over $300 million, an astonishing figure for a television host of his era. He was, without question, one of the wealthiest entertainers in Hollywood history. But unlike many celebrities, Carson didn't flaunt his wealth. He lived lavishly, yes, with mansions in Malibu and Palm Springs, luxury cars, and European getaways, but he also quietly funneled millions into philanthropy. One of the most surprising revelations after his death was that Carson had secretly donated more than $150 million to the Johnny Carson Foundation, which continues to fund education, healthcare, and the arts. It was a final act that mirrored his personality, private, discreet, yet profoundly impactful. For someone who hated revealing too much, his generosity spoke volumes. His influence, however, couldn't be measured in dollars alone. Carson's departure from The Tonight Show left a void no successor could truly fill. Comedians like David Letterman, Jay Leno, and Conan O'Brien all acknowledged they stood in his shadow. Letterman's tribute after Carson's death, delivering a monologue entirely written from jokes Carson had mailed him, was both touching and humbling. It showed that even in his final years, Carson's comedic brilliance never dimmed. Popular culture kept his legacy alive, too. The Simpsons honored him. Comedy Central created the Johnny Carson Award, and PBS aired Johnny Carson, King of Late Night, a 2-hour documentary capturing his brilliance and mystery. In Burbank, a park across from NBC Studios was named after him, ensuring that the city that witnessed his rise would never forget him. But perhaps Carson's greatest legacy was the paradox he embodied. To America, he was the man who made them laugh before bed, a trusted presence for 30 years. Yet to those closest to him, he was distant, private, and often unknowable. That duality, the entertainer and the enigma, remains the essence of Johnny Carson's story. And as his fortune, homes, and memory live on, one haunting truth lingers. Did we ever really know the man behind the laughter? Johnny Carson's story is more than the tale of a late-night legend. It's the story of a man who embodied contradiction. On stage, he was untouchable, smooth, quick-witted, and always in control. He became the soundtrack of America's nights, the man who could tuck a nation into bed with a laugh. But behind that carefully polished image was a man who lived a life of isolation, heartbreak, and secrecy. His Malibu mansion, now empty, stands as the perfect metaphor, a masterpiece of glass and light, perched above the Pacific, yet echoing with silence. It represents both the height of Carson's success and the emptiness of his solitude. His marriages, marked by passion and collapse, revealed the cost of intimacy and the glare of fame. His son's tragic death exposed the limits of laughter when grief became unbearable. And his battle with cigarettes, those damn things, as he later called them, showed that even the strongest stage presence couldn't outwit mortality. Yet Carson's legacy is undeniable. His net worth measured in hundreds of millions, his secret philanthropy changing lives long after his final bow, and his influence shaping comedians for generations. To fans, he remains the gold standard of late-night television, the one against whom all others are compared. To his peers, he was a genius cloaked in mystery. But perhaps the most haunting truth is this: we may never fully know Johnny Carson. He gave the world laughter, but kept his soul hidden. The King of Late Night ruled America's evenings for 30 years, yet remained a stranger even to those closest to him. His abandoned mansion, his wealth, his fame, all of it is overshadowed by the lingering question of who Johnny Carson truly was. So what do you think? Was Carson's greatest act his comedy, or the mask he wore offstage? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed uncovering the untold story of Johnny Carson, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories, and join us next time as we reveal the hidden sides of the stars you thought you knew.